I'm Steve Thompson, Counselor at Large, and I'd like to introduce the counselors, and Ann, and then you can introduce everybody that you've brought, and then I'll let you give. We have Counselor Carney, First District Counselor, President Ellen Hudson, at-large Counselor Michael Green, and at-large Counselor Tim Rudd. So,
great, thank you. For those of you who I don't know, I'm Ann Rooney, Deputy County Executive for Human Services in Onondaga County, and this is our annual team that comes over once a year at the request of the council, and we're very appreciative of the invitation. With me I have Peter Dunn, the Executive Director of the Community Foundation, or is it President? President of the, such a, you know, it's a bigger title, and Amid Turner, who represents Say Yes to Education. And every year we come over to, number one, hopefully give the council a better understanding of the ongoing partnership between Onondaga County, the Syracuse City School District. Is it on?
yes. And if you
I have to talk right into it. I got it.
There you go.
Thanks. Between Onondaga County, the Syracuse City School District, and the City of Syracuse. So I've prepared a presentation, but before I get into that, if I could just for a couple of minutes, the history of our partnership now goes back over 10 years, back to 2008, and even before that with the establishment of the West Side Community School Strategy. That is the genesis of all of the work that started between the county, the city, and the city school district, and our partner foundations. At that time, it was Syracuse 2020. At that time, there was a recognition that Shea Middle School and the surrounding schools were performing at abysmal levels, and that we needed as a community to do more than just have teachers in the classroom, that there's a real need for other supports besides just academics. So that's part of that history. With 2008, Say Yes to Education came to Syracuse, and it was a natural partnership that continued because we had already started the West Side Community School Strategy. As you know, our endowment for Say Yes to Education is fully funded, which allows for every Syracuse...
That's silent applause, silent applause.
That's right. Which allows for every child in the Syracuse City School District who graduates to have the opportunity to go to college with either tuition-free or tuition assistance. The key to that statement, though, is every child who graduates. There is an awful lot of work that goes on in partnership amongst all the organizations that you see listed on the front page of your presentation that goes into services to better ensure that these children in our district, our community, have the chance to succeed and graduate. So a few years ago, and I will get into the finances and it gets a lot more technical, but I had the chance to have a discussion this morning with Jaime Alicea, who we are in lockstep with at the county, between the county and the Syracuse City School District, going over a decade now. It's unprecedented, the relationship between a county in the state of New York and its urban school district. There is no other county in New York State that has in its county organizational chart a division of school-based initiatives. And it's solely because of the recognition that if our children don't succeed, we as a community won't succeed. So we, and again, Jaime and I had a discussion about it today, and he and I recognize that there really is value in talking about the history of the relationship. So the city of Syracuse monies, the resources that they devote to this effort, is all around partnership about mental health services for children. And a couple of years ago, that level was at $1.5 million. That, and I will go through it, but a couple of years ago, that amount was reduced by the mayor's office to $1 million in recognition that the council would want to be a partner in this as well and put in the other $500,000 in this budgetary process. So the mayor had $1 million, the council added $500,000, and at the end of the day, we had $1.5 million that is utilized, as you will see, to pull down almost $15 million in services that are provided by the county in the Syracuse City schools. So 2 years ago, that amount, last year actually, the amount was reduced to $1 million and the $500,000 was not restored. The Syracuse City School District picked up that amount and has this year, with the discussion amongst all of us that that would be a 1-year hiatus from adding the other 500,000. So again, this year we are in the same position. The mayor has put in the 1 million, and we are requesting from the council the additional 500,000 so that we can continue the abundance of services that we're providing. So that's kind of my editorial comment to say that everywhere we go, and I think the superintendent shares this sentiment, everywhere we go, in every community meeting, you will hear from parents that we need more mental health services for children. This is the venue that it happens in the Syracuse City Schools. It's a venue that very uncharacteristically travels through the county of Onondaga, but provides over 160 full-time employees of various organizations funded through the county that provide these services inside school buildings. So I apologize for my long-windedness, but I think this is something that between the three of us, and I wish Jaime were sitting up at this table as well, the four of us really, it's really a passion so that children have that opportunity to take advantage of the scholarship. So on the second page, I have just included our structure at the county so that you can see, to have right in front of you, our organizational chart for our Department of Children and Family Services, and see the fourth box over, if you will, our Division of School-Based Initiatives. This is headed up by our Deputy Commissioner, Jennifer Parmalee, who is very well, she spends most of her days at the school district, and you can see all of those services are really around mental health services for children. Then moving on to the next page, I've just given you a summary of what this, in the 2017-18 school year, the investment now is up to $14.6 million that is invested in the schools through the county of Onondaga. And the 1.5 million, so the 1 million is present in the mayor's budget. We're asking for an additional $500,000, but if you consider it as a return on investment, it's 873%. So for that 1.5 million, we are able to leverage $14.6 million in overall funding for the district, again, solely around mental health services for children. This past school year, we were able to again expand our Division of School-Based Initiatives, and we have added another 13 staff, and this is at no expense to the city. This is all county leveraged monies, and this is providing direct liaisons for the school principals for children who are in high need, that liaison can serve as almost as in the principal's toolbox to say, what is the pathway for this child that I should go down to get them the services they need at the most rapid pace. And again, I pointed out that there are now 160 full-time support staff in all of the buildings. And in partnership with the school district, we have been chosen by the New York State Office of Mental Health to partner with NYU's McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research. This is really being looked at as a model not only across the state but across the country of how to deliver services for children at the most cost-effective and the easiest and rapid way to provide services for children inside school buildings.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you talk a little the leverage part, because I think that's the most powerful part in this. Could you so the 14.6 million, where exactly does it come from? How much is do you have a breakdown? How much is the county?
That's what the whole rest of the presentation
whole rest
is.
Of the presentation
yes,
is.
I break down the whole 14.6 for you.
But I was thinking these were the expenses, like it's describing how we spend it. Does it also describe who pays for it? Is that
so the 14.6 million is all county monies. And we have one portion of it that requires a match. It's a 62-38%. So if we come up with 62% of the funding, 38% is matched, and that's what the 1.5 million is. And it's this next program that I'm going to talk about. If you turn your
keep
page,
going.
you'll see it. Nope. I'm sorry. So the biggest program that we have, and this is the one that addresses family needs at the highest risk level in the district. And it's a $3.9 million program. It's called Family Support for Student Success. There are 58 family support and student support workers inside all of our school buildings in the district. And this is where that 62-38% match is. And so this is really, I would say, the premier program, if you will, that addresses those families that are at highest risk for their child not academically succeeding. And so if a teacher, if anyone has a notion that a child or their family is not capable of attending to the child's needs to have them be at school on a regular basis, this program in particular works with not only the child but also the family. And in tandem, the family support worker and student support worker work with the family and student to guarantee that success of the child. In 2017, and this points out to the need in the district, it served over 648 families with over 1,900 children. And this is where actual cases are opened and case management occurs. And so in order for that to happen, there has to be a demonstration of need, or we are not able to open the case. And so then the next question is, are we getting a return for those dollars? What's happening to those children? And this, even though the gradient is a little bit off, if you look, and I've asked several times, why does 43 and 48% look so far apart? But they shouldn't be. If you look at the math scores and the ELA scores in 2017, and the FSS students, these are your highest risk students in the district, they are showing progress on their math scores and ELA scores. If the whole district is at 48% in grades 4 through 6, the highest risk students are succeeding at a 43% level. That is moving up in their assessments. And the same for 7 and 8, 49% for the whole district, and our FSS students are at 42%.
Do you know what
Where
percentage?
were they at before?
Those kids, I'm not sure, because they weren't part of our case management. Before that, they would have been in just the population, but chances are they were not in school a lot, because one of the highest triggers for us to get involved is absenteeism.
What percentage of the district is categorized as FSS?
If you were to say about 10%, if it's 19, a little under 10%, if it's 1,900 students. And then you can see similar on the ELA scores, but I think the most telling statistic is that dropout rate statistic. And for the whole district in 2016-17, there was a 17% dropout rate. For those families that we're working with, and again, these highest risk families involved with FSSS, the percentage was 0.14%. So that is that program, and again, it's the one that we really are addressing the highest risk students. The next one is what we call our Promise Zone program.
I'm sorry, how does the dropout rate work? Because I know the dropout thing gets to be, people explain it differently or incorrectly at times, so I'm trying to understand what 17% means in this case. Right, you come to the microphone just because we record everything now. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
You're on the internet, Superintendent.
Oh.
That means it's true.
Yeah. We
What's
get your
that?
makeup done afterwards. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, counselors. The dropout rate is based on the student on a specific cohort when they enter 9th grade. All the students that enter 9th grade and graduated 4 years later, that's where the state based the dropout rate from. So there's a dropout rate based on 4 years and 4 years and the summer.
So the 17%, I think what Tim's referring to is sometimes students who take 5 years are also included in that 17%.
In 5 years, they're also included there. They go with the 4 years or 4 years and the summer.
Thank you.
The next program that is part of our school-based initiatives division is our Promise Zone workers. And again, this is a $2.5 million program. There is no funding being requested from the city, but it provides 37 staff inside Syracuse City Schools. It's a combination of a member item that Assemblyman Magnarelli secures every year for us, and then $500,000 from the Office of Mental Health at New York State. And what this does is really dedicated for teachers in the classroom being able to spend time on task with their staff. So if there's a young person in the classroom that is having difficulties, they are able to quickly deploy the Promise Zone specialist to come in and address the needs of that student in the classroom. And again, this is something that it really has been just a fantastic partnership, because we have heard so often that we need to attend to the needs of the students, but also that the teachers have needs in order to keep children learning in the classroom, and I think this matches very well together with both of them.
So this one I definitely understand with the funding, because it's $2 million from Assemblyman Magnarelli, $502,000 from
Office
the
of
New
Mental
York
Health,
State
yes.
Department of Mental Health. The previous one, before we get too far from it, it was the 3.9 million with this 38-62 split. The 38 is the local share, so that's 1.26 million.
Yep.
And that is city money exclusively.
That is the
that's most
match.
of what the
request
the
is for.
previously 1.5 million. Our million goes toward that. So right now we're shortchanging by 263 this part, and then theoretically there's another part coming.
Yes.
It would be the difference. Okay.
Yes, yes.
And while I think of it, because we're doing all this online stuff, and like he made me think of it when he asked for a copy of the presentation, might you be able to email us a copy of the presentation so we could embed it with the video?
Absolutely.
For anybody who's interested.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. And again, I think with so many of these, the proof really is in the statistics and what is happening to the children who are getting the services from these varied programs. And with Promise Zone, we have really been able to measure this since its inception 3 years ago. And as you can see, the test scores again, you can see the all students, all Promise Zone, and then we have what is called Promise Zone Group A, where students are performing like their peers in all of the categories. And if I could explain what Promise Zone Group A, that is for children who's had more than one referral to a Promise Zone specialist. So again, they are still having the more intensity of services, but it's allowing them to stay in the classroom and learn. And that's really the intention of all of the programming that we're doing with Syracuse City Schools. The next one is our student assistance counselors, and this is a total budget of $840,000, and this is where the difference on the match is, Counselor Rudd. And this is 11 staff that is in 5 city high schools, and it's first-line mental health services and also substance abuse counseling. And you know, I don't need to go into the issues that we're facing today around opioids and the abuse of such, but this really is the first line work in our high schools to prevent children from becoming, having substance abuse issues.
Can I ask you a question? So are we diving deeper than just opioids? Are we doing all of the
Oh, yes,
drugs that they're
yes,
affiliated?
absolutely. Absolutely.
So does this $842,000 have a formula?
It
behind
has
it?
a 6238
This is also
as well.
6238,
And we get
okay.
part of this from another funder, so the balance of this is the city.
I see.
It's complicated work. This one, leveraging money, yes. This one is our mental health clinics. And this is something that we have had in place now for about 7 years, I believe. And what this does, and it's fairly unique, and this is the original reason that we, the County of Onondaga, were awarded the original Promise Zone grant of the $500,000. We had an idea that if we could embed mental health clinics inside our school buildings, that number one, it would provide direct service delivery right inside schools, but there is such an issue with a child who has been diagnosed with serious emotional disturbance that they need to see their clinician on a weekly basis. And what that means is that at least once a week, that child is going to be missing significant instruction time to get to their clinician, because the likelihood is it's during the time of school. So with this partnership that we have with Arise, Liberty Resources, St. Joe's, and the Syracuse Community Health Center, we incentivize them for opening their clinics inside the school buildings. The schools give them the space free of charge to have their clinic right there. So if a young person has a weekly or sometimes twice weekly appointment, they just walk down the hall, have their half-an-hour appointment, and go back to class. And that reduces significantly the amount of time that they're missing from instruction. And what happens with this, it's a great partnership between us, the school district, and all of our local partners. Those students' insurance is billed, whatever it might be. So there is no local impact to this. But what it does, again, is keep children in school for more significant amounts of time. And this is something that the state is looking at to really look at as something that could be a model across the state. And the last thing I've...
Sorry, so on that one, the 5.1,
Yeah.
where does that come from?
The children's insurance.
That's, okay. So it's all like state insurance,
It could be your private insurance, whatever the clinicians are able to bill the child's insurance.
I see. So we're just giving them the space.
We're
they
giving
come
them the
in,
space.
And then they bill whoever is the appropriate
Yep.
insurer.
We pay their startup costs. We supply the furniture, computers, all of that.
Okay.
So they're not, if they don't have insurance, are they turned away?
No, because then they would be linked with the county and we would get them enrolled in their proper insurance. And then the other projects that we have in partnership with the schools, I pointed out the school liaisons that we have started this past school year. We also have at McCarthy School a support staff for children that used to be in our day treatment program. They're now located at McCarthy. We have funding for Seeds of Peace, which is a great program that links many of our refugee students with children who are born here in America that attend our schools and in partnership go to Maine every summer for 2 weeks and then bring back what they've learned to all the city schools. The Building Men program that I'm sure most of you have heard about, we are a funder of that. Primary project we fund, which does an assessment of all children in K1, I believe, Mr. Superintendent, and allows teachers to have a fairly robust assessment of each of the students in their classrooms. And finally, the peacemaking project that allows for, as we have gone through many iterations of suspensions and that whole dynamic, the peacemaking project is a component of that to bring students together to resolve differences in a way that allows them to stay in school. And the total budget of all of those is $1.65 million, and that is funded solely by the county and pays for 25 staff.
On that, might you be able to share with us just a paragraph description of each and what do they have specific allocations out of the 1.6 and how much does that represent of the whole that they spend?
I sure
like, are
can.
we funding 100% or 10%?
We are.
Or,
the county is.
Well, so for each of these projects, though, I just don't, are they exclusively reliant
Oh,
on
no.
this money?
They are,
or,
there's
so like,
pieces of it.
how much do they then leverage the money that we're giving is, I
Okay.
guess, also what I'm trying to understand.
I understand. Some of them, like Building Men, I don't know their total budget because I know they're also supported by the district. But I could give you our portion, and for some of them, I would know that, some I don't.
Okay, thank you.
And then what I've provided on this next page is the most complicated triangle you may ever see in your life. But what it does, it's really our multi-tiered system of support to give you a sense that the programming that we do in concert with the school district is very coordinated, it's targeted. Your tier 1 is your whole universal school population, and what you see over on the left are programming that we have that addresses culture and climate and all of those things for all the children in the schools. Your tier 2 those are children most likely who are receiving the services of like a Promise Zone specialist just to de-escalate certain situations. And then your tier 3 are your neediest students. And again, those are your highest risk students that we are really trying to ensure that we do all we can in partnership with the schools to keep those children in school, attending every day, and getting the services they need. And I provide this only because this is the framework that we do business with the Syracuse City School District. And the last is on
the pyramid. I get that the bottom is 100%. Then the tier 2, do you approximately know what percentage of the school district
what
students are
I
in
could
each?
tell you is that what we often say is tier 3, if it has 1,900, if it has 10% of the students, that sometimes you could think of our triangle as being a little inverted. That it's you know, if you think 10% of the population is at tier 3 level, that's very high percentage, and it just points to the need in the Syracuse City School District. But if that's 22,000 and that's 1,900,
Is tier 2 like half the school district? Or
I
is
think
it-
last year with Promise Zone alone, there was over 4,000 referrals for Promise Zone specialists. But there are other programming that happens with that. The Promise Zone was just 4,000.
Okay, thank you.
And then the last part of this, and I know every year we talk about the scholarship and utilization, and before I turn it over to Peter and Amit, I'd just like to point out that all of this other funding that we're talking about really leads up to the scholarship. That this is not, you know, we'll get questions every year, why don't you just use parts of the scholarship? That's like untouchable money. It's in an endowment, and the interest used for that is what is paying the scholarship. So that's really, one is the pathway to get them to cross the stage, and this is kind of what these two gentlemen work on every day to ensure that we have enough money to fund all of the scholarships. So thank you, and I know I have a lot of passion with this, but we've been doing this, you know, together for a long time.
Before you turn it to Peter, can I ask a question of Mr. Turner? I know there was an issue with payment of the scholarships. Has that issue been rectified?
Yeah, there was the issue that you're talking about was the Department of Education came out with guidelines for the Family Education Rights Privacy Act, which is the acronym is FERPA. In those guidelines, they instructed all the colleges that they could not release FAFSA information or federal student information to any third-party entities, which were also scholarship entities. So our formula to calculate awards, we're a last dollar scholarship, and that is a legal term, which means we need to know what students are getting, if they're eligible for federal funds, what they're getting from the federal government in order to award students. And so we were limited in that way because we normally got that information from our college partners. In this particular year, they couldn't release that information, so we had to ask each individual student to get us that information. So we were delayed this year, but there was a recent omnibus bill that passed, and there was very specific language in the bill that said the colleges could give us that information. There was a slight change to that in which colleges need to have a signed FERPA. You know, I mean, that's just a matter of procedure, but we're back on track to be as efficient as possible awarding students.
Last dollar scholarship.
Yes, so what that means is for each student, when we guarantee the tuition, we consider if they're eligible for federal aid, which is a Pell Grant, and in New York State, if they're eligible for state aid, which is a TAP grant, not Excelsior. So when we award students, there's no flat scholarship award for any student. It's the difference of tuition minus the federal aid, which is Pell, and if they're in New York State, the TAP aid.
And Excelsior doesn't cross over. That's strict.
Excelsior is a last dollar scholarship.
Okay.
I think they come in after we do. And yes, as Peter just mentioned, also at our private schools, we also have a grant called the Choice Grant. And at the private schools, the formula for guaranteeing tuition is the same. We have agreements with all of our private schools, however. And so for students and families whose family income is below $75,000 a year, the college itself will award those students. For example, at Lemoyne College, if the family income is below $75,000, the money that gets used to guarantee that tuition comes from Lemoyne College. If the family income is above $75,000, that money comes from our endowment, and it's called a Choice Grant. It's for $5,000 a year.
Thank you.
Yes, and my friends are helping me. And there is also an opportunity grant. So for you all should know, at all of the SUNY schools, the tuition is relatively cheap compared to private schools. This last year was $6,670. There are many students who receive maximum federal dollars and maximum state dollars in the form of tuition assistance. For those students that receive the maximum federal funds, are eligible and receive those, typically in concert with the state aid, they get enough aid that exceeds tuition. And for us, because we know that they're needy students, we have a grant called an opportunity grant. And so that is a grant that they could use towards additional costs of attendance like books, room and board, other types of student fees. And so we have that too. The condition on that is that students need to be living on campus. So we offer that to students, and I should also note that we recently expanded that. Thanks to the good work of our partners, we have a fully funded endowment, and we can afford to expand that to students. They don't necessarily have to receive the maximum Pell Award. If they're receiving enough federal funds and state funds to cover tuition, we offer them the opportunity grant.
Thank you.
So just to sort of piggyback off of that, with the $75,000 limit, the only universities that are included that would still be covered regardless of income, is it still SUNY schools as well as Syracuse University? Are there any others that are included in that, or is it just limited to state universities as well as Syracuse?
Yes, it's state university, any of the public schools, so SUNY or CUNY, State University or City University. And you're correct, Syracuse University does not have an income limit. And it's also worth noting the University of Rochester's income limit is $100,000.
Okay.
The one
House when you graduate?
I'm sorry?
They give you a house when you graduate, 100,000?
I wish.
The one contextual item that I would note from the endowment administration aspect of this, last year we were here and you heard that we had a commitment through the URI process for including the endowment in for funding. And I'm pleased to say that in September of last year, we concluded the contract and received the $20 million grant from the Higher Education Support Corp. So that was the grant that came through the Upstate Revitalization Initiative, and that so that was fully funded back in September. So the endowment has a $30 million corpus, which sustains currently around $1.2 to $1.3 million in annual grants for scholarships a year.
Is that enough that the body of the money stays whole from year to year, or do we dig a little into it each year?
Well, you know, portfolio theory, our theory is that our goal is to earn 7.6% and spend 4.4%, right? And our 25-year investment average is 7.7%. So we have a really strong history in that regard. That said, you can't predict what, right? So I was getting increasingly nervous as markets go up and up and up, and we were waiting on those funds. Fortunately, we did get some strong investment performance over the last 6+ months from the grant that we received from the state. But investment markets go up and down. So the point of this was to create a permanent source of capital that wasn't reliant on government streams of income, so that families would feel confident that the scholarship was there. We have $30 million that didn't exist prior to this starting 10 years ago, which is an enormous accomplishment. We're the first community in the country that has endowed its scholarship in this way, because there are promise programs across the country. But you can't predict what will happen. It could go down by 30%. And in which case we may have to make choices about the level of benefits that are provided to students. Similarly, it could increase over time, which would allow us the opportunity to expand benefit.
Thank you.
So, excuse me. As you know, we have a very austere budget. There's a deficit. It's been well talked about, and I think these programs are vital. But I'm worried in the long term. What if the city can't fund them? Is it something that we should be considering that additional funding come from the school district, other sources of funds? That's my biggest thing is can the city sustainably pay for this over the long term, and should we be looking to other sources for it?
My answer to that, Counselor, would be that it isn't the area to cut. And last year it was said that it was going to be a one-time shift of the $500,000 and then bring it back into the city budget. So just 2 short years ago, this was funded at the $1.5 million level. I don't see us coming over asking for more than the 1.5, and I think anyone would be hard pressed to find a return on investment over 800% that you're getting with these funds in providing the most vital services outside of academics that are provided inside the schools. So I guess really I understand the fiscal situation of the city, but I really believe that if we all believe that children are the future of the city, that this really isn't the place to cut. And considering that the school district is part of your budget, by just shifting it over to the school district, I think you ought to just be shifting the revenue over to them. If you'd like them to administer the funds, that's a little different than them having to raise the funds to pay for it.
I'm sorry, can you say that the last part about shifting the revenue? Can you walk me through that again? What are you talking about?
I understand if you wanted to shift the expense with the revenue over to the school district, the whole idea of the partnership was that we were all in as a community. The city had a share, the school district had a share, the county had a share, and then all the other partners on the front page, the union, you know, obviously the community foundation, and our partner colleges. I understand if it's, for simplicity's sake, if you wanted to just shift the monies over to the school district and we would just work with the school district, and it would be easier for me if I didn't have to come over every year. But but I think that the revenue should go with it.
Yeah.
It was at 1.5 million.
I guess my question is, I mean, we're in this seat now, but different counselors will be there, different mayor will be there. They may have different, you know, agendas, and they may not value it the same way we do. And I just worry that every year we're at the mercy of whoever the counselors are that may want to cut it or may want to do that. And would it be more safe, essentially, in the school district budget? Because
I'm fine if you move it over, just so long as the revenue and expenditures are moved over in concert with one another, not just the expense.
okay.
I have a question if you're trying to invent one.
Yeah, I am.
It's a running joke, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not just ripping on it. When you talked about the, was it the McSilver program?
Yes. Yep.
Could you go into that and how it actually functions in coordination with all you're doing and why it's such a noted organization?
They approached, I believe, the school district first. And the Office of Mental Health. They sat down with us to kind of get a better idea of what we're doing, because it is such a unique relationship to have a county so involved in the, you know, social emotional services in a school district.
Right.
And I think once they've gone through kind of a more elongated version of what I just described for you, they are fascinated by the partnership and want to have an ongoing relationship with us to study, like all universities will, to over time look at the children that are coming through the district and see the effect of the programming. I think we're all seeing it, you know, with the increase in graduation rates over the last 10 years. Certainly we are not taking credit for it on the county side, but I think it's the partnership that has really promoted, whether it's having the scholarship at the end of the day that gives people hope, or it's having services available to families, that this has really, all of us working together, I think, has really contributed to that increase in graduation rates. And I think what NYU is seeing is this is really ripe for study to see if this is something that should be replicated in other school districts, not only across New York, but across the country.
So that's kind of where McSilver fits in. They're doing a lot of data collection and study of how the programs are going?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Is that their primary function, or?
Of the poverty, I can't even say it, Poverty Policy and Research Institute, yes.
So they're basically collecting all the data on everything that you're doing and seeing how efficient things are going and
yes, and seeing if it
developing
is
metrics.
replicable.
Great. Thank you.
They're not providing any actual resources or bodies to do any. It's just data collection.
Yeah.
Okay.
And research.
Yeah.
Great.
I looked behind me. Are they giving you any money?
No bodies.
We're not getting any bodies, we're not getting any money, it's just data collection. Again, like Ann said before, this is the first model in New York State that we have the school district working with the county, providing the services in schools. So the kids are there, the services are there, so they want to see if this is working and whether this can be replicated not only in New York, but throughout the nation also.
Now, if this all goes well and depending on what research and data shows, could we hope to see more investment from the county in mental health, especially in our school district, because I think, you know, the big concern is with a lot of the shootings and things like that have been going on around the country, it's a fear of mental health in our schools not truly being addressed. And I know I've had conversations with members of the school board and parents in my district that, you know, worry about that, what's actually out there and available for our children. And I don't know if that's something that you can actually readily answer.
No, I actually can answer it. And I
Okay,
think
perfect.
we look at the model every year. And last year, we saw that the principals really need, and the school staff needs this liaison person to really help them through our county process. Because you have two gigantic systems between the county and the school district trying to mesh together. And so that was our last iteration of how we can improve this, to have that one, you know, single point where the principal can go and then connect to our system. And again, it's all around children's mental health. One other area that and our juvenile justice world that I don't really talk about with this, but so many of those young people have mental health issues. And, you know, last year, 2 years ago, we secured a federal grant of $1 million to address the mental health needs of young people involved in our juvenile justice system. So I think slowly, and again, we coordinate that with the school district as well. So yes, we look at this model and try to improve it and tweak it, you know, every passing year.
Right. And the data and research that NYU is collecting, is that going to be readily available for both the city, the county, the school district to actually have on hand to use going forward? Because I would assume data and information like that, since it's so unique, would be a great resource for us to have going forward for other federal and state grants.
Yes, it would. And another piece of information that I'd be happy to provide, we had to do a very expansive report last year to New York State because they're looking at this model, and I can share that with you if you wanted to post that with this.
Okay, great.
I wouldn't want to go the whole time without asking a question, so I did make one up. But it goes back to Councilor Green's comment. So what is the county contribution in total to this? And I would frame it in the context of, we currently fund this with a special object of expense. So what's your contribution and how do you pay for it? And I think the feeling is special objects of expense are not supposed to be permanent and critical, and this feels permanent and critical. So it's, where's the appropriate place to put the money? But I also understand the tension of, if we don't give you the money from the special object of expense, it's like we're cutting you. So I understand the tension. But
so I think you can consider the county's contribution to this as the total of the 14.6 million. We are really, in many essences, an arm of the state. So we are an arm of the Office of Children and Family Services, where we get significant amounts of money, Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, Office of Mental Health. All those monies come through us. If you were to look at the last page, where you see the Seeds of Peace, Building Men, Peacemaking Project, and part of the McCarthy School support staff, those are all local dollar contributions that come from the county, but there isn't another entity in the county that can pull down state dollars because of our role in partnership with the state.
And I guess what you're saying is that you can choose to use those wherever you want, and you choose to use them in the city for the mental health.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Again, I understand the concern of the special objects of expense, but it is. You know, the argument has been, the few years that I've been here, has been it's money that makes money. I mean, you know, with it, they're providing necessary services, and I don't disagree with, you know, what you're saying when it's a special object. It's really supposed to be a temporary, like, you know, this year we need X, Y, or Z, but this has been the avenue we've gone down, and I don't know, that's probably more of a conversation with folks in budget and the administration of, you know, is there a better way of going about it than putting in that item? But it's worth every penny, in my view.
I have just one question. I'm sure I know the answer to it, or I'm guessing I do. On the family support student success, the 648 families, and when President Hudson asked you, and you said the insurance end, that, oh no, we would get them, because if they didn't have insurance, if they didn't have, that it would end up
not on that program. That's on the mental health clinics.
No, okay, no. Right, that's on the mental health one. But my question is regarding these people here that if they were in need of some services, county services, whether it be, you know, social services, you know, WIC, whatever it would happen to be, does the county get involved with when they're dealing with the families? Do they look at a comprehensive picture? What do you need? Housing, you know, food, everything, and put it all together that way. I mean, that's where we're working here.
That is right, exactly. That is the family support worker, and that's their whole job, to support the family. So it might be that the family's facing eviction. It might mean they need utility assistance, food stamps, whatever that is. That person is kind of the navigator for the family to get them more embedded in county services they might need, that then helps the stability of the child in the classroom.
Okay, that's right. Thank you. Any other questions?
You make up anything else?
No, I think it was a really very good presentation. Thank you for all the work that went into it.
Thank you all. Thank you. Take care.